From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. I'm Nick Beres. It's Monday. Good to be back and a great show on tap for you this morning. We're going to be talking about some big stories that have been in the news of late, dealing with some very, very tragic and difficult situations. And I think our guest this morning can talk about a wide range of topics, but I think I'm going to hit him on a couple of these right off the bat and invite you to join in the conversation. The number on the screen, 737-7587, if you want to ask the sheriff. That would be Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Nick.
It's good to see you. And there are two big stories. I was gone last week from this program on Thursday and Friday, but a couple of things wanted to ask you about. Okay, we've got the situation with the sheriff's deputy that was shot and killed in Houston. Just a horrible, horrible situation there. And then, of course, the case, I wanted to get some thoughts from you on the incident involving the reporter and the photographer that were shot and killed in Virginia. And I know all the TV stations and journalists across the country are asking, what can we do to be safe? And then you see what happens to this sheriff's deputy, these types of almost not random shootings, but shootings that come by surprise. Right. Let's start with the deputy, and they've got the suspect now. Of course, it appears as though he shot this deputy execution style.
Right. Yeah, that's probably the one of all of these we've talked about that that has a lot of explaining to do. I mean, there's some more issues there that really I really hope we can figure out more to that than it was just a pure, almost random execution.
It just sounds like it was unprovoked is what the sheriff is saying, and that's what's most scary. The other case in Virginia, we know there was a history, and we'll get into that in a moment, albeit 2 years prior.
Right.
But on this one...
Yeah, the sheriff in Houston, he's actually, I think, running for mayor down there. I think he was a former sheriff, but for years, and a really fantastic guy. They have a really good operation down there, and Adrian Garcia is his name. But have
you met him?
I have,
okay.
and been there several times, and he's been here. Just a really good guy. But I saw the story, and I kept thinking, well, there's something we don't have yet. I mean, usually, there's some other reason or motivation, and so, unfortunately, at this point, I haven't seen or heard a motive. That's worse. That's the most difficult kind of case, and so I'm glad and somewhat surprised that we're able to get to a suspect that fast when you don't have a motive yet. So I'm glad that we have someone in custody. Hopefully, we'll understand a little more what led him to doing such a heinous act.
Yeah, I mean, you just worry if, and we've heard about this, that this could in some way be linked, because the deputy shot was white, and the shooter, accused shooter here, Shannon Miles, is black, and you wonder if this again is something that is going back to the tension right now and the treatment of African Americans by law enforcement. We've seen some incidents, obviously. You know what I'm talking about on that. I mean, do you worry about that? Is that something that you've addressed? As bad as some of these incidents that we've seen, and some of them have been deplorable, involving the way law enforcement across the country has dealt with some of these cases. Something like this, I mean, there's just no excuse for it. Around this guy was doing his job pumping gas, and someone comes up it's like you see a law enforcement officer, I'm just going to kill him.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just awful.
Yeah, it's a very cowardly act, and if it's the way that we hear it, and that you're literally ambushing someone and you want to believe and hope that there's a motive that we could understand, not agree with, but understand, and to think that whether it's race related, which seems to be the issue, and there's a lot of tension in the country anyway. We have to talk with our staff. We're talking with them about your interaction in the public and the issues that are going on and the tension that's there. It's just a real thing. You can't avoid it. And it worries me, Nick. I wonder the next generation of who wants to get in this line of work. This has been on my mind for a while, and just because of the tension, because of the quality that you need to do this work, the quality of an individual, it's tough anyway. It's tough to find good people who want to do it. And with all the negative pressure and the negative issues that are going on, it worries me that in 20 years from now, who will have gotten into law enforcement, because it's a tough time, and it's I grew up in a generation where being a policeman was an honor, and I want it to be, and I want someone to believe that. But right now it's been a really tough time, and I hope we can find a balance out there in this country.
Yeah, not just that. And again, they're not saying, as you said, it doesn't appear as though there is any clear motive. And we don't know if it was in relation to some of these tensions. It may very well not be the case, but in the absence of any clear motive or connection between these two individuals, you know, people are going to speculate, and I guess that's not fair, but we may never know unless Miles decides to talk about it. And,
I'd like to see
and it looks like he's going to face, likely, they're going to seek the death penalty on him.
And rightfully so, in a case, if it's the way it looks, and again, pure an ambush, and I don't know if he'd ever had contact with law enforcement. I mean, you want to look into a whole lot of different pieces of his life.
He had a long history of criminal arrests.
With this agency, do you know?
And I don't know. The criminal arrest record includes convictions for resisting, disorderly conduct with a firearm. Does not say.
May have been in Houston.
It doesn't say if it was in Harris County or alone, or if it was wide-ranging over a number of locations. But
just I don't know. Like I said, this country needs to get its hands around society as in general. But you know, we have to have law and order. We have to have people who can at least keep. And granted, there are situations where the law enforcement personnel act out in ways they shouldn't as well, and that needs to be dealt with. But we can't have, you know, anarchy. We can't just throw out everything, and you know, and so I hope we find a way to resolve this person who has done such a terrible thing, and find people who want to come into this line of work who are doing it.
You hit it on the head. I don't know if you've noticed it yet in terms of the cadets and the recruits, and I know you bring people in, and I see over there at the academy that is on Donaldson, you know, on Lebanon Road down there. And they're busy with all that, but not just that too. On another related case is who wants to go be a prison guard in this state with some of the stuff we've heard in these hearings of late, and Department of Corrections and the guards or the staff there being attacked. I mean,
yeah, Nick,
and that's different. I see that as being more resources and, you know, maybe how they run it and what they're going to do to address this. Law enforcement on the streets, I don't. What?
Yeah, the quality of a recruit. But I will tell you, I actually believe, you know, the correctional side, the prison side, and jails around the country are a hidden problem for everybody. I mean, there's an op-ed today in the Tennessean that I wrote last week, and it's in there today, and it's about the mental health problem that we're dealing with. And what you're asking, and I don't mean you, but you as society, for jails and prisons to do today is nowhere near what the book said when I was in college 25 years ago. It didn't talk about mental health. It didn't talk about, you know, populations that are severely, you know, suffering in all sorts of ways. And the person you're hiring today and what you're paying them, you know, the state of Tennessee is not unlike any other state, but what you're paying a correctional officer in ranks, you know, of what you pay other positions in the government is just not fair. It's not right. It's really not acceptable, I don't believe. And the governor's tried, I think, here to raise the salary some, but the truth of the matter is you hear about the overtime problems and things. Some of that's true. Some of it's probably a little blown out of proportion. I mean, I'm familiar with some of the issues that are going on there, but I do think society has to understand what you're doing. These aren't guards. People use that word. Guards are people who kind of stare at the wall, make sure nothing comes in or out. Pretty simple task. These are quasi-psychologists. They're also a law enforcement person. They have a risk and danger involved. The life expectancy of a person working inside jails and prisons is reduced by 16 years off of your life. It's just a tough line of work. And what we have to do, to me, is to figure out what is it you want that to be in our government. And I don't believe it's where it should be in the local or the state government. And I think we have to do something about it. I mean, our state is, and I've been reading like you, but our state is really analyzing all sorts of issues. But the inmate population is getting tougher. They're more difficult to deal with. The conditions are tough. You know, in 2006 in Tennessee, we raised the qualifications to work in jails and prisons. I mean, you know, President George Bush couldn't work in jails. I mean, if you've ever been convicted of anything, you can't work in a jail. Well, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's over the top. I mean, the point is, so when you raise the qualifications, you eliminate people who can come to work there. So the pool that you're left with and what you're paying that pool to do a very tough line of work today, no wonder we have a lot of issues going on inside the systems. And so until society realizes that you're putting mental health people in jails, being supervised by people who came to work in corrections, and we're elevating what we're expecting them to do. We're elevating what their criteria to become one is, but we're not really elevating them in the scheme of a workforce.
There's going to be changes.
It is.
There's just going to have to be. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, if you're there, and we've got several callers, I think, and I knew they would want to comment on this. We'll talk about the deputy situation and some of what the sheriff has said, and then we're also going to touch real quickly, and some of you may want to comment on that, as well as these random type shootings or the ones that catch you by surprise involving, you know, that reporter and the photographer in Virginia of last week that's just still continues to just rock me. So we'll take a break and be back with your calls. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get you right after this.